CEO of the Prosper Companies and the Managing Director at Transworld M&A. I just want to thank Jeff. This place is awesome. I've never been here. And I will be back to record my podcast. I know that for sure. We are new to EO sponsorship, but we're not new to EO. So I've been an EO member since 2015, January 2015. I looked this up for the board presentation the other day. So we understand the community. It's been an amazing community. I think between my business partners, we're in 4 EO chapters currently: Colorado, Nevada, Fort Worth, and Dallas. My wife Jessica's on the board of Dallas. So same last name, Fiakovich. And the short version on me is I did corporate finance for about 3 years and haven't had a W-2 from anyone other than myself since 2008. So I sold my first company 13 years ago and sort of haven't looked back in the, I had not such a great experience running an M&A process. So I said there has to be a better way to do this. But it goes back even further, and Carl has a similar story. We were both our dad's exit plans for our businesses, and they never really told us. So my dad's business, I'll let Carl tell his own story, but we basically sold it for scrap and to one of his friends that owned a similar business because he was so burnt out. So we're very, very passionate about entrepreneurs and just talking, and we just like to have conversations with people, and we're always happy to just talk business. And that's how we're viewing this. However we can add value, great. And then ultimately, if a deal comes out of it, that's cool too. But like, we just want to talk deals, and we just want people being in a good place with their business. And Carl's going to hit on some of those points, and then just knowing value and just their options. And yeah, that's about it. Our office runs in Texas, Colorado, and Nevada. We run 5 different divisions servicing business owners. We have a consulting division called Exit Factor. Our Main Street business brokerage, doing deals up to about $2 million in earnings, is called Transworld Business Advisors. Transworld M&A does, which is what we're talking about today, does deals over $2 million in net, roughly. And then we have a commercial real estate division that does owner-occupied real estate and national tenant rep. And then we have a private equity division called our family office. So we buy businesses. We're buying a $110 million company next month. So we also do this for ourselves, and we just love it, eat it up, nerd out. But
yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, similar to Al, I was heir apparent to my father's construction business. I'm an only child, so there was no other sibling as an option, and didn't want to do that. And when my father finally got the memo that I was not going to take over the company, he ultimately took the steps to just close it and liquidate his assets. And I've run into similar situations with friends of mine, and essentially that's really structured my why as to why I ended up in Transworld. But similar to Al, my last W-2 was in 2000. I've been an entrepreneur for a good part of 20 years. 24 years now, and I was successful in building a few companies. I was lucky enough to have a moonshot as my first business. I took a company public on NASDAQ as an inventor of a technology for alternative energy. So there really wasn't a sale, but there was a successful exit. And even though I was ultimately fired from that business because I locked horns with some of our strategic partners, soon to be buyers at the time, it still is a heart-wrenching thing for me. I wasn't ready for that exit, if you will, and I take that kind of care and custody to our clients today, because there's really 2 things that have to work for them to want to sell the business, right? The price is one thing, but then the second part is like, what are you going to do? And if you don't know what you're going to do, that can be a really challenging exit strategy and decision. And in fact, the last business I had was a trucking company, and it was the same type of thing where the exit came, and it was an ideal exit for my partner and for myself. At least I felt that way. But he just wasn't ready, and so we pivoted. It became a partner buyout, and ultimately a few months later, he's like, "Man, I should have maybe considered taking that deal when it came," but he just wasn't ready at the time. And so I would challenge everybody in this room, like, if you take away one thing from this presentation, right, it's that you're going to exit your business at some point. Right, and I think the challenge for many entrepreneurs, if you're like me, it's like, I'm going to be good when, right? When it's 1 million in sales or 5 million in sales or 10,000 Google likes, something to that effect, right? But then when you get to that point, I mean, if it were me, I move the goalpost again, right? And then so I'll be happy when and when and when. And then you never really make those decisions. So I would argue that you're trying to build a business and think about it with being able to sell the business any day, not being able to sell the business someday.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think there's a misconception, just because you have a sellable business doesn't mean you need to sell. Like you want to be in a position if you choose to do it or not. And that just makes it leaves you options. And you're just going to run a more profitable business that is easier to deal with. More time, more money, et cetera. And we're open to questions. Just interrupt us. We're pretty informal. If anyone wants to jump in, this is a lot more formal and awesome. Jeff, thank you again, than I thought. So yeah, but that's great.
I jumped the slides here a little bit, guys. Sorry about that. So we talked a little bit about Transworld, but after I got out of the trucking company business I was in, I was trying to think like, man, where do I go to have a lot of impact for owners? How do I help and share this knowledge with other awesome owners and entrepreneurs? And really, it was a obvious choice to pick Al's company and Transworld. And I did that because the amount of transactions that this particular office has done, over 1,500 over the time that he's been in business. I mean, roughly we do, 250 deals a year?
Yeah, it'll be 3 something this year.
Yeah, so there's a lot of times at bat, and there's no business is too small, and we transact up to 100 million across a broad range of industries. So, for somebody that wants to help owners, this is a very broad playing field, and one of the main reasons why I chose to be part of this team. Blessed enough that you have me. So jumping in, building a valuable company means building something that's efficient, spins off cash, gives you time, and can provide benefit for you and your owners, right? And again, I mentioned earlier that the goal here would be to think about building and preparing your business to exit at any day, not exit someday. And so today we're going to cover the 2 main factors that affect value, defining your exit options, getting your finances in order, and then ultimately becoming an owner versus an operator.
And when we first take on a consulting client, almost 10 out of 10 times, or 9.5, it's always their financials are a mess, and all the operation is in the owner's head. It's almost every time consistently, regardless if they're 50 million in revenue or 5. It's like always the same, generally speaking.
Yeah. So what's the business worth, right? And the most, I'd say, accepted methodology is a multiple of EBITDA. I don't have to explain what EBITDA is to the people in this room. But the multiple is a little bit more ambiguous, right? But I'd say generally between 0 to 30 million in revenue, the average, and I emphasize average, is about 3.5 times, right? And that really is going to depend on the type of business it's in, the industry, maybe the location, the amount of attention and that you need to do as an owner, right? Is it absentee, or are you like actively in the business running it? Like all those factors can contribute to that multiple.
Yeah, and I would just say, just one comment on EBITDA. A lot of people try to be fancy and confused, but it's how much cash you're taking out of the business, and it normalizes it across industries, and it's just a benchmark to work off of.
Yeah. So 2 main factors that are driving the value of your business, right? The quantity of your earnings, and then obviously the quality of your operations. So as it pertains to the quantity, number 1 would be profit over revenue, right? Not likes, not cost of your equipment, not fancy websites, but actual money in your pocket after paying taxes, right? And the second would be plateaus to profit. What I mean by that is, in the previous slide we talked about a 3.5 average, but there are really these plateaus of multiples as you go from 0 to 30 million, right? That's a very broad range, right? So on the low end of that range, you could see multiples of like 1.2 generally. And on the higher ends, it could be 8, 10, and even more, depending on what industries you're in, right? And I think an important thing to understand as a business owner is where you're at in that plateau, right? If you're 100,000 away from that next plateau, that's a full turn on your revenue, right? Which means it's a whole nother pop to your value, right? Example would be maybe a service company that does 450,000 in SDE or EBITDA, let's call it. But when they reach that 500 or 550 threshold, those multiples start to go up and increase. And you see that with certain companies that want to increase the value of their business. They might be a pest control company, have a couple of trucks, right, be 250,000 or so, and then go out and buy another company, get to 500, and all of a sudden they're not trading at a 3 multiple, they're trading at a 4, right?
And the importance of profit, and investors are looking for a return on capital, so it's just so it's not like certain scenarios, it can be a multiple of revenue or something like that, but that's rare, whereas you usually get into a multiple of the earnings or the profit. And we have a saying that profits for business and then revenues for ego. So it's just like that's all what I care about. I don't care if I have flat revenue, or actually do, but as long as my profit's going up, that's what I care about.
Yeah, there's lots of trucking companies out there that do 9 million in sales and put about 50,000 to the bottom.
Like the craziest thing I ever saw, I think, was 120 million in revenue, and it was like 50,000 in net. And I was like, this is the most terrifying, and there was a lot of risk associated with what this person was doing. Literally the most terrifying business I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. So, but we see that time and time again. So I'd rather have $1 million business that makes 500 grand. So it's just, you do $1,001 million, you can stay in EO.
Yeah, right.
But you make 500 grand, who cares?
Yeah. So last point on the quantity of earnings is just, it makes sense that a $500,000 EBITDA business versus a 50,000, kind of what we're alluding to, that has more room for error, right? Can weather a little hiccup in operations, et cetera, right? Whereas 50,000 has to be run perfectly to stay in the green or the black.
Yeah, I call it mistake money, and that's why when people are buying it, and once you get over $1 million, and like these thresholds, like $1 million, $2 million, 3.5, and then 5, and then you're kind of off to the races. So it's just a math problem. But more quantity, the more options you have, I would say.
Yeah. And the second bucket, if you will, of value would be just the quality, right, of the business. So the first would be, keeping your house in order. And what we mean by that is really the financials, right? Like, I would say 80% of the clients I work with, there's a lot of accounting or financial forensic works that needs to take place to actually extract that value and be able to present that to a bank and a buyer. And not all that work is going to be generally accepted as true value in the business, meaning that the owner is ultimately going to have to become the bank. Right, so having your books in order is paramount to getting the most money for your business, and having the biggest buyer pool of interest to your business, right? Because from the buyer's perspective, if they can put $100,000 down and buy $1 million business, that's great. But they're probably going to want to do that versus paying $100,000 cash to buy a coffee shop, let's say, right? It's just that leverage, and you have to understand that.
Yeah, and the easiest way to think about it, every dollar you can drop to the bottom line, call it, you're going to get $4 in return. So it's just like, that's an oversimplified way to think about it. So it's just like, stop doing silly things, or put them in another entity, or do something, because it makes the arguments hard, and it plants seeds of doubts with buyers, and they're like, what else is going on in this business here?
Yeah. Next would be owner versus operator, right? I'm guilty as well, and you chief everything officers. I'm sure some of you in this room are that, but to get the most value and have the most appeal to the marketplace, it's better to be an owner in your business, not necessarily an operator in your business. And then the last part would be, better than the rest or comparables, right? Like, ultimately, when buyers are going to look at your business, they're not misinformed. They're going to know what a comparable business looks like, and be able to have some kind of litmus as to how well the business is performing and why they might want to buy your business. So if you have some attributes, if you will, that are functioning better than the marketplace, that bodes well for interest and likelihood to sell the company.
Can I just touch on I want to talk on quality of earnings real quick, whereas if you had a bike shop during COVID. You sold a crap load of bikes in 2020 and 2021, more so than you sold the year before. So it's like, what's the normalized level now? What's your business at? And there were winners and losers, and we're kind of out of that now. So that's what we think about. You might have had a bump or a decrease, and what does the business go forward look like? So I think that's important to understand. You can't triple your earnings one year and sell off of that without some structuring that you're going to hate. I can tell you that. Yeah, it's just not going to be good.
Yeah. So just, not to get too much into this, but in terms of like KPIs or comparables, right? Efficiency, right? How well do you kind of lever some of the factors in your business, right? Your metrics should be above industry standards. It should produce time, money, and ultimately freedom for yourself, and generally be predictable and recurring, right? There are fluctuations in businesses. All businesses have them, but year over year to have some kind of confidence that it's going to produce what you expect it to.
And just industry standards real quick. I was investing in a landscaping business my friend owns, and we did a valuation on it, and he had like 3% gross margin or net margins on 60 million in revenue, whereas he should have been like 12, 15%. So and he wants to exit for this insane amount. So he would need to be at like 200 million revenue, same margins, whereas he can exit for the same amount at the same revenue. And that goes back to revenue and earnings. So it's important to think about that. I call it chasing your ass revenue. We allowed to say that when you're just round and around.
Technical term?
Yeah, that's the technical term.
So here's a number that I hate is this high, right? This is the percentage of businesses that never sell, right? So there's quite a bit. You talk about a silver tsunami and losing a bunch of value in the marketplace. This is why. And ultimately, I think there's people out there say, hey, you need a plan, and we'll sell you a plan for thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, right? But I think more than a plan, you just need options. I think every business owner just needs to know where their specific ripcords are for certain situations, right? And it's very, very individualized and also to the business that you own. So when you have some time, I would challenge you to just think what those options might be. And I would say, like, there's not a week that goes by that I don't have conversations with 4 different business owners about this very thing, right? Like, what might my pricing be? What is my sales strategy? What is my marketability? Would a bank finance me? Do I have to be the bank? Like, all those things kind of play into things, and then based on their timing, the value that they're looking to extract, then we can kind of piece together a strategy that makes sense for them, right? I call it the health checkup.
Yeah. So only 13% of businesses sell. We transact at about 75%, and the 25% that doesn't sell, it's basically the biggest thing that'll kill businesses is when they start going on the decline. So it's negative. We call it negative comps. So your numbers are down year over year is the simplified term. Or if there's some sort of fundamental issue like this place, we would need to get the landlord to agree to sell it and cut a good deal on the lease. So that would be the other kind of landlord issue.
Yep.
Those are the 2 things that really screw it up.
So many of our clients, they never planned to sell. That was actually option B, right? Option A was to transition to a family member, sell to a key employee, that sort of thing. I mean, that makes sense, right? But I'd say out of a majority of the deals that we do, 95% of our clients are giving us some type of deadline. Why is that, right? Like, they're not poor planners, right, or anything like that. But the reality is they're just people, right? And they have, human opportunities, human challenges, human crises, and that's why they come to us and say, hey, I need to sell by whatever date. So all the more reason why it's always good to be able to sell your business at any time versus not someday.
And it's the D's, it's the death, the divorce, the disability, or as 40s, despair.
Yeah.
People need money.
Yeah. So some of the items here, right?
Anyone ever been burnt out? I sure as hell have. Yeah.
I mean, I used to call EO like Alcoholics Anonymous for entrepreneurs, right? Like, this is 4 minutes, right? Getting right?
So true.
Work through it, but I mean, it happens, and it's funny. I work with some coaches and they're like, hey, if you know any businesses that might want to improve, like, send them my way, maybe we work with them, whatever. And, a lot of the coaches that I've interacted with will say, you know what, I will talk to them, I will consult with these owners, and that's probably great, but I bet you what, Carl, 8 times out of 10, they're gonna say, no, it's too much work, just sell it now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, and the people, we'll get into this later, but the people that are buying your business can't get it to they can't do most of the time what you all did. So that's like something to be very proud of. The people that can go from 0 to 10 million, it's hard to do that. And then, 10 to 25, and then we're on our march to 50 right now. I'm like, can I do that? Do I want to do that? So it's just, it's interesting.
Yeah. And look, I mean, we get it. Selling does not happen overnight, right? I would say the first, step in the process is to really get a business health checkup, right? Like I was talking about. I call it a PASS, a PASS, a pricing and sales strategy session, right? We just kind of talk about those things and marketability, et cetera, right? That business physical. But the next step in the process is to build a track record, right? To get the most money or the highest valuation for your business, you're going to need 3 to 5 years of consistent performance. And then, when you reach that point of you're ready to sell, that process of preparing the business and then ultimately marketing it takes, a good part of a year. I mean, 8 to 9 months is the industry average, and it's not unheard of for it to take longer.
Yep. To find the right buyer.
Yeah.
We put a lot of thought into who's your buyer, who's it going to be, what's important to you. Yeah. And because everyone has different things that are important to you, and I can tell you it's not money. I say this all the time. You might think it's money. It's probably not. It's like 5%. It's all the other stuff.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I tell people this all the time, right? Like, I'm the only kid. I have, parents that are getting up there to 80 years old. They live literally on 30 acres in the middle of nowhere in a rainforest in Hawaii, in the middle of the Pacific, right? I mentioned earlier I'm the only child, and my mom is all of like 4'10", and she's a golden retriever breeder, so she picks up these 80-pound dogs and starts walking around, and all I can think about is like, okay, what happens when, right? It's gonna happen, and then am I taking the steps personally to just kind of think about that? Now my mom will say, don't worry about it, Hakuna Matata, it is what it is. But I think running a business is the same way, right? At some point, an exit is going to present itself, and will you be ready?
Yeah, and it's an important. You spent your life, a lot of you, developing the business, and it's an important piece on your personal balance sheet. So you want to be able to monetize that.
Yeah. And I would say on the good side too, right? Like it's not always the negative side of the conversation, right? Where you get that business health checkup, for instance, and you think your value is here and you're expecting us to say it's here. I've actually seen it the other way, right? And then what does that do to your plans ultimately?
Yeah. And then there's a conception that, or a perception that buyers think businesses that are running a process, there's something wrong with them. Not true. It's just, we're running a process on a $4 million EBITDA business right now, and I become friends with the guy. He's moving to Mexico. He wants to move with these young kids. He's done very well, and that's what he wants to do. Business is in great shape. I don't want to sound negative, but forget the dream, sexy exit, right? Pick one from reality, right? Whether that's, milking the cash, closing the doors, selling to a third party, selling to a family member, transitioning to a family member, or selling to an employee. Yeah, and just transitioning to an employee is a great step if you don't need, they're not going to pay you the highest price. However, it mitigates a lot of the transition risk. So it's a great way to do it. And then transition to family, it's the same drill.
Somebody approached me recently, he had a tree cutting business, and he said, hey, can you give me a value on my business? And just kind of want to know what it's worth. And I got a deal structured with an employee of mine. I want to know if I'm getting a good deal. And I said, well, tell me about the deal. And he did. I'm like, wow, I think you're getting 30% more for your business than I think the market would bear. So that's the deal I'd probably take. Good job.
Yeah, cut that deal.
Yeah, cut the deal. Yeah. Okay, Okay, so so bottom line. So it seems simple, but if there's one thing to keep straight, and Al, I'd like you to chime in here because you eat and breathe this stuff, but it's keeping your financials in order, right? So I'd say the first thing to do is just review your books quarterly, right? It's not because your accountants and bookkeepers and controllers are not good at what they do. It's that nobody knows your expenses better than you do, right? Like, and I guarantee if you're not already doing that and you start to do that, you're going to find things there, right? It's no different than, me signing up for Apple TV and watching, binge watching Ted Lasso, and then I'm going to forget, like, oh, I paid for that subscription, right? And then a quarter goes by and I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta cancel that deal. And business owners do the same thing, especially when they intermingle a lot of their personal, stuff to their business. Second thing would be benchmark it against industry. I think this is such a must. Good buyers will, right? So you should too. I mean, if nothing else, it's a way to understand what your peer group is paying for, what their key KPIs are. And I was talking about the landscaping business at a 3%, but the industry is 12%.
Horrible.
Yeah, I mean, other buyers are going to do the same thing, right? And they're gonna discount the business if it's
and I'd say just a comment on like books and like I would go a step further, review your detail for at least your biggest categories. So I do this every month. Look who we paid, marketing. It's like our biggest things, just to make sure that money's going in to the right places. And then we're also canceling things, and I have people that work for me that have P&L responsibility, and that's how their bonus is tied, so they pay attention to this stuff more than I do. And I probably review the detail every month on like 10 businesses. So it's doable to do it, and it's very, very important, but don't be like, that's my accountant's job or whatever. Like, and look at your balance sheet too. That's one of the more important documents, because that is, we call it the CAT scan. It'll tell all the sins of the business. So, because you can see, if you see debt creeping up, and just like looking at things, and working capital is important depending on what kind of business that you're in.
And then every dollar you put to the bottom line is maybe $2, $3, $5 in value, right?
$5, yeah. So it's very important. So if you cancel, what I explain to my wife when she doesn't cancel subscriptions, I'm like, look, man, that's like $800. I know none of you have that problem. $800 a year. Like, what are we doing? And this other one's $800. Yeah.
Death by a thousand cuts.
It makes me insane.
Yeah. And the last one is cutting the fat, right? That other deductions page on tax returns can be clean, or it can be very messy. And look, there are processes to take some personal expenses and add them back to what ultimately would flow to the bottom, and a buyer might appreciate and value. But it's just messiness to contemplate. And I'd suggest there are other strategies. I am not an accountant, right? I'm more of a quarterback in the process, and can introduce people to people that can help. But I mean, there are retirement accounts, insurance vehicles, right? That are expenses that are valid add backs at sale. I mean, and even for, I've seen some clients that do like management consultant, components that are managing their business, and that's where they put, the training, the cars, the cell phones, the trips to Cabo, things like that, but it also keeps the books clean and separate.
Yep. Yeah, you can put all your personal yah stuff in like one expense category. That way it's easy to find.
Yeah.
That's, essential to the business.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, this next topic is really just meant to drive demand, right? So the three buyers groups, if you will, are strategics, the private equity groups, and then ultimately individual buyers. And I want to talk about like how to build demand for your business, right, and what that might look like. And I'm not suggesting that strategic buyers and private equity buyers, you should not appeal to them. You absolutely should.
Can you go back? I just have a couple comments on this.
Yeah.
All right, so just to break it down real quick, private equity, when you think about want versus need, private equity is going to be a math problem. And I'm sure some of you are invested in private equity deals. You're like, what's my IRR? And that's what they care about. and that's what the investors care about. So there's going to be no emotion with it. Strategic buyers will pay you more, but they take forever to close, and and you can give them some inside information that you probably don't want to about your business. And then individual buyers, which are just individual financial buyers and we like dealing with them because it's a need versus a want. They need to earn to replace the income that they're trying to earn, 1, 2, 3 million, whatever it is. So we love doing deals with financial buyers that have a need versus a want. Private equity wants to buy your business for their IRR. Strategic buyers wants to buy your business for their add-on or whatever. So just to keep that in mind. They're all great buyers, but it's just evaluating what you want to do.
Yeah, yeah, and the individual buyers are really coming from corporate America, right? Typically,
A lot of them,
right?
yeah.
We're in that one seat, if you will, or one hat, right?
Yeah.
Job function, right? So, if you think about that as it pertains to marketability, right? If you're a jack of all trades, chief everything officer in your business, right? And so you have to wear the production, sales, and maybe managerial hat, right? That's great. That might be one buyer, right? And then we've got to convince that one buyer that your business is the right business, and you need to pay that amount, right? And then maybe if it's, let's say sales and marketing, maybe there's 10 buyers. But then if it's just maybe, let's say, the management seat, it might be 100 buyers. And then the probability of selling the business is higher. The likelihood that you get a higher price is also higher.
Yeah. And a business that we bought last year, this guy, the operator that we funded, worked for a telecom business his whole life. And he was like, I'm way more in the details than I thought. And I was like, welcome to being a business owner, man. So it's just like, the buyers just need to be prepared to dive in.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, cool. So this is really a follow-on to the last slide about trying to remove yourself from multiple seats, right? To appeal to a broader buyer pool. First step really is a reflection on you, the business, and the business needs, right? Like, how many seats does your business need to operate, and then how many of those seats are you occupying? And if you're kind of a hub and spoke model, right, where you have authority on all the decisions, I mean, in a way, it's almost like being a solopreneur business, right? Like, it's the one shop, right? Because now every decision that the business makes, you make. And I have a solopreneur business, small mechanic shop, as an example, right? And it's a hard sale because that guy is the business. And so everybody that looks at that is like, what happens after I buy it? And it would be no different in a 20-person organization if you as the owner are making all the key decisions, right? And really, if you think about that, right, like the two biggest, I think, general concerns that buyers have when they're looking at a business to buy, right, is like, okay, is there a risk the customers are going to go away when I buy this business? Is there a risk that the employees are going to go away when I buy this business, right? And I've been in buyer-seller meetings where the owner of the company's like, man, I've known my employees for 20 years. I've known my customers for 20 years, and it's so great, and they love me, and I know their kids and name their dogs. How does that make the buyer feel? Right? So, so to be able to remove yourself and actually have the employees work for the company, right? Or that your customers like the company, its products and its services, not necessarily you as the owner, is vital to improving marketability. Like,
a way you could look at this is what percentage of the sales are you, or something like that.
That's a great point, actually. Yeah, and so. Yeah, so I mean, spot on. So from the key kind of roles of a company, right, are revenue, customer-facing roles, right, productivity roles, and then ultimately employee management roles, right? So general rules of thumb from a revenue standpoint, you really don't want to be involved in more than like 30%, I would say, right, is a good swag, right? And customer-facing, again, try and remove yourself from the love fest between customers and yourself, right, in your business.
It's when people don't know who you are, or find you on the website. That's good.
And production. I mean, I had a very, very small boutique shop selling last year, but the owner's claim to fame and why it was run so well he also was producing all the key products back there, and so that was a big hurdle for the buyer to get over before we were actually able to close that deal. So, you know, I mean, buyers are going to be willing to take on that role, but do they have the skill sets to do so?
And like we sold this business years ago that made teeth. This guy was a legend. He called himself the denture dog, but he was only in there making the teeth because he wanted to. He had a whole team that could do it. So that's the difference. He didn't need to be in there. He just was. So we were able to bridge that that pretty well.
Yeah, yeah. And then, you know, the last role, which is you usually remove yourself from as an owner, is that management role or that people interface role, right? I mean, ultimately, it's not as critical, but it is a big indicator of value multiples and buyer appeal to the marketplace, right? I mean, if we're going to market a business and it's semi-absentee or absentee, I guarantee you that's going to go somewhere near the top in terms of one of the key attributes of the business, 100%.
We probably have like 10 emails in our inboxes with buyers asking us, I want a recurring revenue business, owner absentee, $1 million in EBITDA. I'm like, dude, they don't exist. And if they did, I would buy every one of them.
Yeah.
like you would not see them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's been that way forever.
Yeah, and well, that was actually our last slide.
Great.
I mean, so you know, this is my contact information. You're more than welcome to reach out to me and, you know, talk shop. And, you know, for EO members, I mean, I'd say that Al and I are willing to, you know, take audience with any one of you and talk about your business and your plans.
Yeah. Yeah. If you guys want to talk, cool. If you don't, that's fine too.
Yeah. So at this point, are there any questions that we can answer? I mean, we kind of breezed through this, so eat, grab a drink. You know, we're here till 1 o'clock, but certainly appreciate your time.
Does anyone have any questions? No?
How are most of these acquisitions financed? Like debt, equity, you know, deferred, you know, stake for the seller in the business right now?
I can take that. I would say sub 5, 6, call it 6, 7 million in enterprise value. You're talking about using a small business loan. The cap to the small business loan currently is 5 million. I think they're going to probably raise it, but in that sort of structure, you'd probably see a 10% seller holdback, and then or a seller note, and then 90. So you get 90% of your cash up front. If you're call it north of 10 million, you're probably going to see. They'll do, banks will traditionally do like 2 to 3 turns on EBITDA, so maybe call it like a $10 million deal at 5x. So you get 60% financing, probably 10 to 15% seller carry, and then some cash or something like that. Like it, and as you all think about this, like, do you want roll forward equity? Like the one deal that I was talking about where my friend's moving to Mexico, we really believe in that business, so he wants to roll forward, and these gentlemen own 3 other businesses, so he's rolling forward 31% of equity so he can get a second bite down the way. So it all depends on your goals, and he doesn't need the money. So, and that deal has roll forward equity and earn out because he had a COVID bump, down year, and then a seller note. I don't know if that answered your question. Yeah.
So on the SBA side, like I've been thinking about internal, you know, being prepared to sell internally while not taking away options to sell externally.
Yep.
What are the,
Smart.
Is it harder to get an SBA loan than other types of financing? Is it more scrutinous or?
No, well, it's a government program, so there's a lot of documentation, but we're blessed with the SBA program because like a country like Canada doesn't have that, and all the deals in Canada get done cash and seller carry. So you can, and they like, if you're looking at an internal transition, the transition risk is minimal, even if that person doesn't have a lot of money. So the banks love those. No, the banks love, they don't.
The balance sheet of an internal acquirer is not zero, but it's.
Yeah, it's close to zero. Yeah. No, you're absolutely correct, but the banks love those deals because they're in the business. And so they'll do those deals all day, and the whole point of the SBA program is that it's a guaranteed, it's an insurance policy for the banks whereas you don't need the collateral to offset it. That's why it's there. So they'll do a deal like that I don't know a lot about your business, but they'll do a deal like that all day. There's banks that we work with that are really good. Like, you don't want to go to the Wells Fargo or the Chase, or if y'all are any sponsors, but like, and just walk in and get, like, you want people that do business acquisition financing doing that. But yeah, that happens all the time. Like Carl was saying, take that deal and run. Sometimes you can get more out of your internal employees because it's worth more. And you could show that to them, because theoretically, if there's an internal employee that makes 150 grand or something, they're making plus 150 grand on whatever that is. That could be part of the debt service. And then they're going to take out whatever you're making or whatever. So it's a fabulous solution if that's what you want to do. That answer?
Yeah, no, that's a great thing.
Yeah.
One of the things you mentioned earlier is $1 EBITDA is 4x,
Yeah.
5x
Yeah.
the way out, right? So obviously for a company that is manufacturing, they buy a piece of equipment, that's a CapEx expenditure.
Yeah.
It's balance sheet, doesn't affect EBITDA. It's more difficult for companies that develop software and do things
Sure.
that are R&D related in the scope of their business.
Yep.
But let's say they develop a marketing funnel that takes a lot of time, attention, and resources that never really hits the market because
Yeah.
it just didn't work, right? Or what have you. How do you guys handle that? And how do you suggest a company like that will say, all right, this is how much of my development time I need to, effectively put on CapEx, or I'm not going to get called, that's bullshit, right? That's
Yeah.
you guys deal with any of that sort of thing, or have experience
Eric?
with that?
Yeah, I can take this one. We would look at a normalized level of like CapEx, and if it was like double, triple for a year or something like that, we're like, look, this isn't normal, and we could take that back if we're looking straight at the balance sheet piece of it, or if that's embedded in some expenses somewhere, we could say, look, we did this, it didn't work, and we did this moonshot, and we'll take it all back. But like when you run a process, you're hiring someone to tell a story. So it's like, that's why you want them to know what they're doing. So it's like, we're the storytellers of the business. So it's like, here's what happened and here's what did and didn't work. And the business that I keep talking about is that they rent snowmobiles. So they spent triple their CapEx because they were worried they weren't going to be able to get snowmobiles. So now we're at normalized CapEx, and because it was like $1.5 million, where it's like normalized CapEx in that business about 500 grand, buying new stuff. So, but yeah, we're happy to talk further specifically if you want.
Yeah. I think you had a question.
I think I have Derek already.
Hey, Derek.
One comment, one question. The SBA, I'm on my third SBA deal, they're time consuming.
Yeah.
I'm 9 months in this last one, and just, they wear you out. It's a small one too, so they're just very time consuming.
Yes.
SBA 601 forms, like discrimination forms, there's like tons of stupid stuff.
Yeah.
So that's just a kind of comment too.
Are you doing a 7A or a 504?
I think my file's probably this big.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
constantly asking for a million things. It's a lot of work, and as a business owner, it is a lot of work to run your business and then also just deal with these SBA people, which I did T-Bank and Gulf Coast. They're both decent.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're good, but they're just time consuming. So that's just to answer your question. But it works. Like almost every time, guaranteed you get a loan done.
Yeah. And I'll just comment on that. And banks are worried about, I'm pretty sure banks are worried about defaults. So they're scrutinizing deals more. And
It
I've
was
been,
easier back then. 5 years ago, it was
Yeah.
great. And now I think it's hard.
yeah, it's hard. We do about 35% of our deals in Count or SBA. And yeah, it's a grind. It's become harder.
I think the general feeling is like it's gotten harder because there's more defaults.
Correct.
I think they're more scrutinizing the deals they're doing because they
They-
ultimately need to sell that deal.
They are.
They're selling that deal, so that's their business. And I feel like it's been really hard on.
Yeah.
Even though we have a good business, I feel like I'm being judged by
Yeah.
the business around me. More importantly, how prevalent is the second bite of the apple? You know, most of the stuff we talked about here felt like one-time exit.
Yeah.
How prevalent is the second bite of the apple? Because my wife and I are ready to sell. We want to, sell 55% of our company,
Yep.
and then recap down the road. I have several friends do that.
Yep.
How prevalent is that in the space to be recapping and selling the second bite?
Yeah, we do it all the time. It's just a lot of people you're young, so a lot of people.
Not that young.
Whereas if you're selling a baby boomers business, they're like, I'm going to be dead when I get the second bite. I don't want it, man. But That's literally, people say the most insane things to us, and they're just, it's not their goal. Whereas
Yeah.
if that's your goal, we do that all the time. It's just, you're gonna have a different buyer by your business than like an individual financial buyer. It'll just play into that piece of it.
And then second question is choosing the right, partner to work with, because, for example, we had a small firm like Murphy Business Solutions. I'm probably sure you know who they are. And they just wasted our time for like years. It's just so much work,
Sounds right.
And, it just seems like finding the right partner in this. How do you kind of? Someone told me you got to go interview 5 investment bankers and really kind of learn. Is that kind of what the
Yeah, you should talk. That's a great question. You should talk to people, understand their deal flow, their reach, and how many people they have on their team. Murphy sold my business, and that's why I'm here. So they were not good, but it's just you get different flavors of it. And it's also it's very personal. So it's like you gotta be with someone that you can talk to every day, and maybe be friend, because we're gonna have lots of tough conversations. And like part of our job, being good bankers, is to tell you the truth, not tell you what you want to hear, tell you what you need to hear, sort of thing. And that's what. But just understand people's boxing capabilities. There's a lot of good people that could do it, but it's just, and it depends on what your goals are.
Yeah. Last comment.
You keep going, man.
No, last comment.
Yeah.
How dangerous is it to meet, someone high net worth individual that wants to buy a business? How dangerous is it to be on your own without representation or something like that?
Danger zone. 9 out of 10.
Danger?
Yeah, and what it is you'll just kind of be talking for a while, and you'll just waste a bunch of your time, like you are with your SBA forms. And it just, a lot of people call us, they're like, I got a buyer buying the business, I want to list, but I got a buyer buying the business. And it's like, okay, they're going to call us back in 4 months. That deal blew up, and then they already come to us with deal fatigue. We could at least, at the very least, and like tell you if a deal is real or not, and ask them 10 questions. And go from there. Because if you want to recap with you want someone with, if your goal is to recap and kind of take a step back or whatever that is, like someone with money isn't necessarily the solution. Someone you want to probably make your life operationally easier. That's the only reason I have partners in all my businesses, and I only sell pieces of the business because I want my life operationally to be easier. I don't need their money. So, and that's how I think about it, at least. I don't know if that answered your question. Yeah. And we're happy to commiserate about SBA deals anytime.
I'm done. That's the last one ever.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I don't know.
Yeah.
So, entrepreneur, you're solving problems. You go out to build a business. You think about a business as a product.
Yeah.
If you were advising an entrepreneur that's starting a new business as a product to sell ultimately one day, would you say a B2B solution is a better path, or do you say a B2C solution is a better path? What's going to get the highest multiple and the best ROI on the investment that it takes to build that company?
I have my thoughts. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to get Trump no matter what, but I like B2B.
Yeah,
And maybe more than it's B2B or B2C, it's more just the competitive advantage that you have in the marketplace, right, against the competition, right, and how hard is your nut to earn. Like, I think those two things is what I would think about, right? Like, I mean, I left the venture game and starting businesses. I'm like, oh man, I'm just going to go B2B, create a specialty chemical, and sell it by the tanker loads, right? Because it was easy, and it was an easy sales cycle to get over, and so I'm just partial to that type of business.
Yeah, and I just, me personally, I like B2B, and most of my companies are B2B asset light service businesses, and that's what I like and prefer, because they're high free cash flow. You don't have to go out and buy $1.5 million worth of snowmobiles.
Yeah.
Although renting snowmobiles and making $4 million is also cool.
And we easily, I mean, I can't speak to Al, but I easily get 2 emails a week looking for that.
Yeah.
Asset light, B2B, and just I think there's high demand there. So, in our business, when we sell a business, even if it's got a low EBITDA number or something like that, because it's a smaller business, I mean, they go quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's good to see the slide earlier. What was the percentage of employee selling to employees? Was there a percentage on that slide?
I don't think there was a percentage on that slide, but
Yeah.
they would fall under the individual financial buyers, which was the 80%. It's a fantastic way to go, and
Yeah.
especially if you can finance it with some sort of SBA mechanism, because the employees, as the gentleman up here mentioned, like generally don't have the money, but the guarantee's there, so the bank will do the risk because there's no transition risk. Because you could have someone coming to do an SBA deal on the other side with all the money in the world, but no experience, and they won't do that deal. And they would do that more than the person that doesn't have any money.
Yeah.
So,
And it
Yeah.
plays in your benefit too if any of y'all are thinking about expanding too, right? Like if you have that skill set and you're in the same bucket of an NAICS code, right, and you want to go and like you're a 2-truck pest control business, you want to go buy a 5-truck pest control business. I mean, you can get into that deal for a pretty good gig if it's an SBA business.
yeah, and you can usually do it with no money down. So you can grow through acquisition with no money down because you don't need to take any of the money out of that existing operation
Yeah. Yeah.
if your business has strong free cash flow.
So a company like Transworld, would you oversee that? I mean, what is your role in an employee buyout?
Yeah, we'll advise on an employee buyout, absolutely. Help you structuring, or if you're like far enough along, we'll tell you to go to the lawyers and here's the bankers and the lawyers you should talk to, but we're happy to chat about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've seen family deals go bad, right?
Yeah.
So it happens. I mean,
Because there's risk to telling your
unfortunately.
employee too. But that's what we do. We just, business is a 4-letter word called risk, is what I tell everyone. That's all we're doing. And just deal structuring, as someone was asking, is just a shift of risk. That's all it is. Any more questions?
All right.
Cool. Well, we'll hang
Thanks
out
all.
for a little bit
Yeah.
longer. It was really good. Great
Yeah.
questions.